Welcome back to TYT Sports. Once again, continuing our What If series. I think we've done 10 of them. They're all juicy and groundbreaking and a lot of fun. The comment section has been having a lot of fun too. So please make sure to comment below with all your What If that you want us to see me and Andre talk about. And as well, take a look at the description box. I think I packed 10 of them in there at this point. But we continue with the greatest dunker of all time and arguably one of the best scorers of the aughts. I think that's like 2000 to 2010 is the aughts. Nailed it. So Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady played together on a team. That was the Toronto Raptors, who donned the coolest jerseys of all time and have yet to bring them back. What if Tracy McGrady and Vince Carter didn't separate and stayed together on the Raptors? What would that have meant? Well, you would have had a great scorer and one of the most athletic individuals we've ever seen in the NBA. Granted, that might be his greatest asset was his athleticism. I know a lot of pundits out there are both in favor and against Vince Carter as a great player all time. I stand in the middle just because, look, when you're 10 years old and you're watching this guy do windmill dunks, he's the greatest player of all time, just for that one period. So don't jump on me too soon. But Andre, my man, what if Tracy McGrady and Vince Carter stayed together? Where would the Raptors be, maybe not today, but how would they have fared in the late 90s, early 2000s?
If the Cousins would have stayed together, it would have, and I think we also have to make the assumption that the personalities mesh and they both agree to the roles that fit them the best. Those are two big ifs. But if they do that, I think Tracy McGrady would have developed in a different way because, Vince wasn't just a great dunker. He was a great scorer. Like, he was an outstanding scorer. And McGrady, when he was on those Raptors teams, he was being groomed almost in a Pippen mold. Like, he was the defensive stopper. You go back and look, I think he was averaging like 1.5, 2 assists. 1.5 for 2 steals, and then almost another block and a half in that last season before he left. Or at least he had the potential to. He had a stretch of that. So I think had he stayed, he would have been the one who was the defensive stopper, and he probably would have developed more into a point forward. When he was in Orlando, he was doing everything, but scoring was his calling card. I think that if he did adopt that Pippen-type role, they would have been nasty. The problem for them is they would have peaked during a time period when the big man was ruling. So they couldn't have beat, I don't think, the Spurs or the Lakers or any of the dominant big man-led teams. But if they could have stuck around till the mid-2000s, after the rules changed, once Shaq started going downhill, they might could have snuck something out in, 2005 through 2008, somewhere in that period after Shaq and between Duncan and Garnett titles.
Yeah, but the big man was just a trampoline for Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady in their primes. I mean, the big man, they wanted the big man down low just so they can find a way to dunk over him. But no, you made the point, and a good point. Vince Carter was more than just a dunker, of course. And he was a great scorer. But, I didn't actually realize that about Tracy McGrady. Learned something new every day. And that it's true, he was a much different player when he was on the Raptors. So for his career, he would have been a much better all-around player and maybe not as much of that dominant scorer, or as D'Angelo Russell calls him, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, when asked about it. But when I look at those two, you make the good point as well. You make too many good points. You have to start making bad points, if you don't mind. But in general, they didn't have a big. But I wonder if that would have helped them lure a big man over to a team like the Raptors. Fear the North would have started much earlier. Drake wasn't even a thing yet. So it would have been a much different time in Toronto's history. But in general, it's funny. This is a what if that I love the idea of them playing together. But as we talked about, that's a big what if. It's the personalities that didn't match up well, and they didn't really get along. I also loved Tracy McGrady's career after the Raptors, I think more than I loved them on the Raptors. The Magic and the Rockets, and then, of course, the injuries plagued him as well. But, what he did with those two teams is remarkable in a scoring aspect, and it was quite a joy. And then Vince Carter has become a journeyman almost. He's still playing, too. Vince Carter's going to be playing until he's 50. No one believes me, but he's going to. He's going to be the first guy to do it. Any last points on Tracy McGrady and Vince Carter before we wrap up?
The fact that Vince can still be a journeyman and be productive while he's on the court so late in his career, it kind of indicates that he has some skill. We talked about Derrick Rose and how if he's not explosive, he can't produce. Vince actually had game. And so what McGrady, when he went to Orlando, the thought was it was going to be him and Grant Hill.
Right.
Well, honestly, I think him and Vince had the potential to be better, even without Grant Hill's injuries. They were family, at least extended family, but, for whatever reason, I guess they both wanted to be the Jordan. Neither one wanted to be Pippen.
Right. I agree with you on those as well. Make sure to comment below in terms of the Trace McGrady, Vince Carter, what if situation. What if they stayed together? What would have happened with Toronto Raptors? What would they look like in the early 2000s? Make sure to like, favorite, and subscribe to the channel and the video. At Professor DRZ if you want to follow Andre on Twitter. At JasonRubin91 for myself, and at TYT Sports. We'll see you next time with some more awesome what ifs.